Well, Mary, you always just make my day, even when I see you on television, but to be able to sit and talk with you in person, just, it's such a joy, and it's wonderful to have you here.
Well, it's wonderful to see you again, because we go back a long time.
We do.
And we've had so many wonderful experiences together. Once I remember we did an interview in Fort Worth, or Weatherford, and we sat on, it was in a church, and we sat on a table and interviewed, and I think we talked for about 4 hours or something, because we hadn't seen each other so long.
You were saying just before we started rolling the camera that this is your 50th year in show business.
It is. I don't know where it went, but it's so exciting, very, very exciting. And when I think about, here we all are right back where we started. I mean, in Weatherford and in Dallas, and my child over there. That now, what is it? What is it you say I am?
I'm named after.
She's named after me. I think she's my godchild too, but that's her sister. But Mary Anna has done so extraordinarily well in her career. We're also thrilled about her.
Let's talk a little bit about your being here for this retrospective they're honoring Jimmy Stewart with. Have you known Jimmy
a long time,
yeah.
Quite a long time. And I knew Jean Arthur. They made many pictures together, you know. And she was Heller's godmother, Jean Arthur. And I met Jimmy, I think, at that period when they made pictures together. And then we see each other vaguely through the years. But when the accident happened in San Francisco, which was very tragic, and we were all in hospitals for quite a long time, I finally went home back to where I live in Palm Desert now. I don't live in Palm Springs. I live in Palm Desert, and went back. I couldn't walk. Had to learn how to walk all over again. And he wrote this beautiful letter to me, just absolutely perfect, beautiful letter for her. And he said, Mary, don't think about this now, but someday think about it. When you start getting well, which you will, we want to make you a Boy Scout. And I almost got well overnight, you know, because I was so excited. But again, I thought, well, I never did really want to be a Girl Scout, but I sure would like to be a Boy Scout. And by golly, the time came when I was well again, and they had a big thing as we were having tonight for him. They introduced me, and I came out in my Boy Scout hat. And I was ready to say the Boy Scout. Nobody asked me to say it. Fortunately, I'd probably forgotten it in the middle. But anyway, I am the only girl Boy Scout in the United States or any place else. And they have a huge, huge museum. I'm also now a museum piece. And there's my head in bronze with all the young men, but one Girl Scout. But I'm a Boy Scout. That's because of Peter Pan, I think.
Let's talk about Peter Pan. NBC is going to run it again.
Coming again, the 24th of March. And this has been going on for years. They said it'd been one of them had been burned, and they couldn't find it. This went on. They have a new man, which I have not met yet at NBC, but I've had I don't know how many interviews, like 20 a day for several days, and still have 3 more to go. And talking about Peter Pan, and they are doing it. And the thing that's thrilling to me is I hope it will be done for years for children at a special time, because all the children have grown up and they're having parties. The mothers and fathers now are having parties for their children, and on that night. And I will be in Australia. I won't be here, but I have seen it very many times.
This was done when? This particular one that they're rerunning?
I haven't. It was the last one that was done, and by that time, everybody had grown up. You know, all the Lost Boys were grown up. The little girl who played Heller, you know, Heller was in it too. She was off at university, and I was doing Sound of Music, And that was when it was made. I don't know the year, but we could look that up. And so we started with a new cast, and everything was going extremely well at the Helen Hayes Theater, which was right across the street from me where I was playing Sound of Music. So we started rehearsal first day, and I started to teach the young children, the 3-1, you know, how to fly. And so I'm showing them, and they're watching. And we had everybody with us that we'd had in the show except one man, and that was the one who flew me back when one was flying forward and the other coming back. And this was a new man, and I met him. So I was going very slowly just to show the balance and everything to the children. They were watching. And suddenly I said, now I'll really fly, and I'll go out of your sight. But you keep watching me coming back and forth. So we did, and I was going like a bat out of heaven there, and I saw the wall clear at the top, or like higher than this, coming very fast, and there was nothing pulling me back. So I'm ready to go right into it. So I figured, now which shall I do, just flat or turn? So I turned, and this elbow went boing into the wall, way up, and nobody could see it. I was the only one who could see it, but they heard it, including my husband, Richard. He couldn't get out of the seat. They just couldn't believe it. So anyway, they brought me down and put me on the floor, and I said, I would like to go to my dressing room. I'll be right back. And nobody could say a word. What had happened is the man who had not seen Peter Pan believed I could fly. So he didn't pull any back. He just believed. So anyway, this has a funny finish. I went to the hospital. My arm had been broken right here, and I still had to do Sound of Music that night. So I had it taped to my body and the guitar up here, and I'm playing like crazy, you know, and having to do the Leonard with 2 hands. I could only do it with 1. And about 2 months later, it was well again, and we started all over again. And I went back to flying. Of course, they were going to fire this young man who didn't pull me back. And I said, do not fire him. He will never forget this. He will never forget it. He will always know where Peter Pan is going, which he did. And I'm flying here. I get over to this wall, that's the same wall I've hit. And there was a huge mattress on it at the top of the theater, and it said, Mary Martin slapped here.
That's a great story.
It's one of my favorite moments. Mary Martin slapped here. I really slapped too.
Mary, what are you doing currently, or what are your plans to get back on the stage? Or
well, I hate to talk about it before it actually takes place, and I put my signature on. But I have been talking to the boys who did I Do, and they've written the show, and it's in negotiation, and it will, if it all goes through, I would start rehearsal in October. And in the meantime, I'm going to Australia next week, and I'm doing many, many things, but that is the thing that will probably be it when we sign. I don't believe anything, even after it's signed, maybe sometime you don't do it, but it will be a joyous experience, because they were so wonderful. You saw I Do, didn't you?
Oh, yes, when you did it with Robert Preston.
Yeah. This was the saddest moment I've had in years, when Robert left. Just devastated me. I'm so crazy about him and his wife. We were all such close friends. And I was waiting to go and see Peter Pan. I'm a museum piece now, too. Peter Pan's in the museum in New York, and Peter Pan's in the museum in Los Angeles, and they were showing it for the first time, and I was going over to do it just to watch and talk to them later. And I just was sitting waiting on the chair when it came on television. Robert Preston has just died. And I just thought, I just can't go through this. I can't go over it. But you do. And when I got over it was filled. They were ready to go, and they had to do a second show because it was so filled. And I hadn't seen Peter Pan in a long time. So they asked if I would stay for the second, and I said, no, I really can't. I've had some bad news, and the first show is as far as I can go tonight. But again, Robert Preston was probably, well, Pinza and and Robert Preston. Well, and you know, think of the fabulous leading men and great singers, and movement. Yul Brynner, I knew he wasn't going to live. He told me. And I did the last night of his night before he left, when he was honored on stage. I did that. In a week, he was gone.
In the early days of Peter Pan, how did they have a way to fly?
They flew in the window, up to the mantelpiece, and out. They never had this big flight. And this was I wanted Jerome Robbins to direct, and he never had directed. But I knew that he could, and he was very young. And I said to the Civic Light Opera, Edwin Lester, who was the head of it, and a terribly close friend of mine, said, Mary, we'll do Peter Pan if you want it. And I said, well, I would like it. Jean Arthur, my closest friend and Heller's godmother, was doing it in New York as a small musical. But this turned out to be a big musical because no one had ever flown like that. And Jerome Robbins and I worked on this thing for hours. And finally they came over from London and they said, you'll have to take that out. That girl won't live. She won't live. My God, you can't fly that high and that fast because you go out of sight. Then you come swooping in and you go out of sight. I loved it. Never had any fear. Never, never, never. And had so many things happen. One of the nights in San Francisco when we opened, after we opened, I was flying with the children. Then the children don't fly anymore. It's just me. And suddenly, they couldn't find me. And nobody knew where I was. And not including me. It was pitch black. It was black. So I'm apparently hanging at the top of the theater. And finally they had to say, we've had a technical problem. And they had to cut the fire department. And the fire department came and stayed in the back. They didn't let us see the fire department come because it's close. And so that was intermission, supposedly. And the fire department kept saying, Miss Mary, Mary, Mary. And I said, I'm up somewhere at the top. So they had to bring all the fire things. And in fact, I was hanging at the top of the theater. I never looked at it. Went right back and started flying again, finished it when the children could come in. So I didn't see it until my last show in that theater. And finally one night I looked up and I did not believe it. We were like 3 stories high.
Incredible, incredible.
Fun though. See, I really believe, when I went down, the first time I did Peter Pan for NBC, we came straight from the theater. Closed on Saturday night, went over and rehearsed and did it the first time. And when I went down, I didn't because when I went down and said, do you believe? If you believe, clap your hands. Well, see, nobody was there. For the first time, I didn't hear any clapping. And I believe so strongly that I heard them clapping. I heard the children clapping their hands but no one was there except me.
Mary, I promised I wouldn't keep you because you're on a tight schedule today, but again, it's just wonderful to see you. You look fantastic.
And so do you.
Thank you.
You just are lovely. And isn't it marvelous to have friendship this long?
Yes, yes,
Only
I
the
cherish it.
beginning.
I cherish it.
Me too.